Hello, and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 3, Episode 17. Today is Sunday, April 24th, 2016. My name is Graham Perro. With me today are Tyler Fitch and Melissa Daphne. We got the gang all here. A couple things to talk about. A little bit of news with the Toronto Rock and some possible issues with who's coming back next season. I know it's a little early to start talking about next season since this one's not even over, but some interesting things going on there. The Major League Lacrosse season has begun, and so we'll talk about that just a little bit. And we had, of course, 4 interesting games to talk about this weekend. No playoff spots were decided this past weekend, which is good news for the Knighthawks and the Stealth, because the only way that something could have been decided was if they got booted. So it will come down to the last weekend of the season, and I'm pretty sure that happened last year as well, so that's pretty exciting. And then we'll get to our predictions as well, and we all had pretty good weeks. So we will start off. This actually happened last week when the Rock played Buffalo in Toronto, and I didn't actually see it until later because the game ended, and we basically stick around for a couple of minutes, and they're doing the handshake, so as we're filing out. But after the handshake's finished, Nick Rose grabbed the microphone on the field and started addressing the crowd. Now, this was the final home game of the season, so he was saying thanks for being there for us all season and all this kind of thing. But apparently he said something specifically about Josh Sanderson. Now, he didn't say, this is it for Josh Sanderson, he won't be back. But that was kind of the implication, and he asked Josh to lead them in their victory lap, which they do every time or every game. So the implication was that Josh Sanderson is done. Not exactly a surprise, considering he was kind of thinking about it at the beginning of this season, and then the 0-5, 0-6 start compelled him to come back, or compelled the team to ask him to come back. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but yeah, we may have seen the last of Josh Sanderson in a Rock uniform. Actually, what I was going to say was we may have seen the last of Josh Sanderson in a Rock uniform at the ACC because they're done for the season at home. But he didn't play this past weekend either, so depending on how he's doing next weekend, that might be it for him. The other issue is that Colin Doyle was out for the last 4 or 5 games, obviously done for the season. With an off-floor injury. And it turned out that this was a cracked vertebra in his neck. This is not the kind of thing that you want to mess with, and I cannot imagine. Now, maybe it's just a really minor thing and it sounds worse than it is, and he's going to be out for 6 to 8 months, I think is what they said. So maybe he'll be totally fine next year and come back, but when you're 38 to begin with, and you break your neck, I'm not sure pro lacrosse is the best decision for you to make. So we may have seen the last of both Josh Sanderson and Colin Doyle at the same time. So those are some pretty big losses for the Rock for next year. Any thoughts on that? Melissa, start with you.
You know, I agree with what you've already said. I mean, Josh Sanderson, it seemed like he was pretty much retiring at the beginning of the season, and so the fact that we did see him one more year, I think he's probably just kind of done. And then with Colin Doyle, yeah, I don't think that's something you mess with, whether you're 20 or, approaching 40. Cracked vertebrae can definitely have a huge impact, and so long-term impact. I know a few people that have had their vertebrae fused because of cracks and things like that, and it does impact your mobility, and depending on which ones they are, they can really impact your life long term. So hopefully it's not as serious maybe as it sounds, but I wouldn't think so, because that's one step away from more serious issues. So I would hope that he's putting his family first in that decision, no matter how much he wants to play. I don't want to see him end up with more serious injuries because he couldn't stop playing. No fan wants to see that. As much as we would love to see Colin Doyle keep playing. What about you, Tyler?
Right. So yeah, I'm the same age as Doyle, and if I cracked a bone in my neck, I don't think I'd ever get to play lacrosse again, and I don't even have cross-checking allowed in mine. I mean, going back to the NL after that, it seems ludicrous. So that is definitely sad because he's one of my favorite players of all time, and I don't get to maybe watch him anymore. Josh Sanderson, I imagine everybody knows inside the locker room, and Nick Rose kind of just let it hang out there. And it seems like that's probably what happened. I know that when Cam Sedgwick, he gave us, basically told all the Stealth people before the last home game, 2012 season maybe. Yeah, one of the, yeah, I had, man. Anyways, so they kind of had a little 3-minute ceremony before the final home game to recognize him in Everett. I think Sanderson maybe isn't certain about it, but it would have been nice to honor somebody who helped bring him probably 6 titles I think they've won, and they haven't come back. I mean, he's obviously local, and they can honor him next year if he's actually done. But they could have maybe done something before the game. I hope that he has one massive game left in him this weekend. That'd be really awesome to see him go out on top with the win over Calgary. But that's speaking as a Stealth fan, and we'll see what he can do. What else we got for news here, Graham?
The other news is also about The Rock, and I guess it's kind of related to the first one, and we're talking about injuries again. And I know there have certainly been other teams who have had their injury troubles. Vancouver Stealth come screaming to mind. But this was interesting. I read this just this week in Teddy Jenner's column. I guess the CBA, I believe it's the CBA, it might be the league rules, but I imagine it's probably the CBA, says that each team has to dress 16 players and 2 goalies for every game. And the Rock were down to the point where they had nobody left on their active roster, so they had to add in Steve Fryer as their third goaltender just so they have enough people on the active roster and then scratch him from a couple of games. Even worse, they got to the point where they had to add Rob Marshall to the starting, not the starting lineup, but to the not only the active roster, but make him part of the game and not even a healthy scratch, but they had no intention of playing him because he was injured. So he was out there, he was dressed, he was presumably he practiced with the team before the game, he was on the bench, never touched the floor at all. They just had nobody else to go to. So this, I guess, is unprecedented because they had no rules to cover it. They had nothing. They the free agent deadline and trade deadlines have long passed, so the team just has no options of picking up anybody else. So Teddy's talked about the possibility of rule changes in the offseason to address this, where if you're in that deep of trouble where you just don't have anybody to play, and you can barely meet the league minimum requirements for getting people on the floor, then you're able to pick up somebody. And there's, I don't know what kind of rules are going to be about who that can be, whether they've, I think he said, he had a name for it, I don't remember what it was, is it street? Something like that. Street free agents or something, and it was somebody who has played in the NLL before but isn't playing now, and there's probably other criteria as well. So yeah, so I don't know who they would have picked up, but obviously this year that's not available. So yeah, we might see some rule changes to that effect in the off season.
That actually is interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that the one player was injured, because on the broadcast they did mention about that issue and that there's players not being played, but it was kind of like, well, if your season's already gone and this game isn't going to make a difference, why wouldn't you play them? But that makes a lot more sense. But this also begs back to what it used to be, because the rosters used to be much bigger and they were allowed to have more on reserve. So I do wonder if they'll allow teams to go back to that, because we have had a couple teams in that situation. And it sounded like you had something to add, Tyler, before I cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the transaction wire for the week, and you've got Buffalo bringing players off the active roster and the practice player list, Calgary doing the same. So there's there's movement that's available, but I think it has to be somebody from the practice player roster, or I can't believe the Rock have nobody on the practice player roster that they were willing to bring up, and they were instead dressing somebody who was normally injured. If they have no healthy practice players, then they bravo for winning the games they've done and scoring 5 goals when they do.
Actually, I hadn't thought of that, but the weird thing is a rookie named Kyle Aquin played this past weekend in his NLL debut. So this past weekend was his first game.
He's dressed in Vancouver for the warm-ups. He was on the floor for the warm-ups in Vancouver. I remember seeing him.
He's been with the team, at least on the practice roster, the whole season. So in the game where they dressed Marshall but never played him, I don't know if Aquin was just not available or if they didn't call him up in time and there were issues that way. So that's confusing. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. But yeah, so hopefully that gets sorted in the off season and we don't see this kind of thing again.
Well, but even if at the beginning of the season the smaller rosters have had an impact, when what season was it? It was a few seasons ago when Colorado lost their goalie in the first 30 seconds of the home opener. That had an impact on the rest of the season, and because everything was so limited, they had to scramble to get another goalie because Colorado used to always have 3 goalies. And then we lost our goalie, and so even in the beginning of the season, we have seen that be an impact, not just at the end.
Yeah, they reduced the roster sizes by 2 or 3 years ago. I think that was an owner's request saying if we can take the active roster size down by 2, that means we're paying 2 less people. And the PLPA must have agreed to it, or it could be that the owners were asking to reduce them by 4 and they settled on 2 or whatever it was. But yeah, everything dropped by 2, and suddenly, if you had any injuries at all, right away you're scrambling for warm bodies to get on the bench, whereas before you had a little more leeway. So it could be that the owners are saying, okay, well, it saved us a bit of money, but it can really screw you over if bad things happen. So maybe we'll add those 2 players back in, or maybe just 1. I don't know what they're going to do, but yeah, something needs to change. The next thing was the Major League Lacrosse season has begun, and I noticed it today or sometime this week anyway. I noticed it was happening because I saw a number of tweets in my timeline that annoyed me because people were saying, "Hey, lacrosse season is about to start," and I'm like, "What are you talking about? Lacrosse season's been going for 4 months." But these are obviously field lacrosse people. Actually, I think I saw the same sort of tweets about a couple of weeks or a month ago when college lacrosse season started. People saying, "Hey, lacrosse season is about to start." So, yeah, so I don't follow the MLL quite as much now as I did when there was a team in Hamilton, and I went out to a few games here and there. But Tyler, you were going to talk about this one a little bit.
Yeah, I loaded up the ESPN app to watch the Mammoth and Rock game and found the MLL games. I was like, I wonder if this is preseason. So I started up and started watching the new Atlanta team, and I found Drew Westervelt. He was playing for the Chesapeake team, so skipped out on the NLL season and came out for the MLL season and did not look sharp. I think he would have looked better if he had a couple months of games under his belt, but his team as a whole was getting crushed in the first quarter that I saw by the new upstart Atlanta Blaze. Pretty good outfits for the uniforms for the Blaze, and hopefully they'll catch hold as well, or maybe build off what the Swarm have started down there, but they have 2 pro teams in Atlanta, so they should feel lucky.
Are the Blazes an expansion team, or did they move from somewhere? I forget.
They are an expansion team, as I understand it. But I was pretty excited to see that, but still, it's a couple weeks to go or another week to go in the NLL regular season. All the rookies for the MLL are still in college, and the NLL decides to start playing games, which is And we talk about it every year. It's just bonkers. Like, hey, come out. We need you to play for this team until some kid graduates and takes your spot. It's like, how do you get guys to show up to do that? But anyways, it's not our core competency. I'll try to get back to the NLL, but I just saw it and I was like, wow, that's April, a little bit early.
And as Melissa was saying, depending on where you are in North America, it might be awfully cold to be playing lacrosse outside.
Yeah, when the MLL expanded their season, I think it really had a huge impact on their season ticket base, because that same year is when the NLL extended their season, so they were going farther out into summer. The MLL was going into spring, and so you had a huge overlap. And for Outlaw fans and Mammoth fans were both, all of a sudden you had to choose between teams because of the Denver Broncos. The Denver Outlaws have a very home-heavy beginning of the season and away heavy on the back end of the season. And so most of their games were overlapping the same time, well, same weekends as the Mammoth games. And so a lot of times it was making you have to choose. And then we have DU, who has been really good the past several years. And so you got people being lost to the lacrosse games at the college. And so all of a sudden there was a huge amount of competition just for lacrosse in April and May that wasn't there before. So I think the MLL doing that really was not a good decision. And yeah, it can be cold here. We have snow sometimes as late as June. So last week we had like 6 to 12 inches of snow depending on where you were, and the week before it was 70 degrees. So you never know what the weather's going to be like in April. So that's another factor for the Outlaws games.
I imagine the players who play for the Florida team, which used to be the Hamilton team, are probably okay with that move. Playing outdoor games in Florida in April is probably better than here. Now it's been thinking in Fahrenheit now. It's been in the 60s and 70s over most of the last week or two, so it probably wouldn't have been too bad here. But yeah, it could certainly drop to freezing quite easily in April in this area, same as Denver.
Yeah, when I went to the NL Championship game in Toronto in start of May 2011, it was freezing and snowing that day. So you're not out of the woods yet.
Nope. All right, let's move on to the games of the week. And as I said, nothing got decided on. So looking at the standings, Buffalo's it's same as last week. Buffalo, New England, Georgia, Rochester, Toronto in the east, and Saskatchewan, Colorado, Calgary, and Vancouver in the west. Vancouver has to win all their rest of their games and have Calgary lose, and for the last 2 weeks that's been the case. Georgia and Rochester, I believe Georgia has the tiebreaker. I think that's true. So if they finish with the same record, Georgia's in and Rochester's out. So Rochester needs a little more work than Georgia does. Buffalo's clinched first in the East, I'm pretty sure. Black Wolves have clinched a spot, so they're in it somewhere. And yeah, Toronto's gone, as we know. All right, so game number one, New England 21, Georgia 12. This did not look like a blowout. I actually watched the first 3 quarters of this game, and then the Toronto game started, so I switched over to that. And this was an entertaining game. This was a lot of fun. It went back and forth. Georgia had the lead, and then New England had the lead, and but neither team was giving up. Both teams scored. The first quarter just went back and forth. It literally had Georgia, New England, Georgia, New England, Georgia, New England, Georgia, New England. And then teams started scoring in bunches. But yeah, the scoring was all over the place. The goaltenders didn't look great, but I thought most of the goals were just really good plays from the offense, rather than defensive breakdowns. And then once I turned the game off, New England went and scored 12 goals to Georgia's 2, and it turned into a 10-goal rout. So Yeah, it was tied almost in the middle of the third quarter, and New England won by 10. So that shows you what the fourth quarter was like in that game, which I didn't see. But yeah, fun game to watch. Kudos to New England for taking it to Georgia, considering Georgia played really well last week, and we're still playing well in the beginning of this one. And I guess Georgia was hoping to clinch their playoff spot, but they will have to wait at least another week. Do you guys see this one?
Yeah, so I was able to get this. The league started games every hour yesterday, so it wasn't too bad. I was able to watch an hour before I switched over at their halftime to the next game. But good battle back and forth. I enjoyed watching them go here. Sean Evans late in the game, that when they went on that run, it was just like they can't stop me, right? And they couldn't. He was able to do whatever he wanted in that third and fourth quarter to seal the deal. And I don't know, the good close action, and I was just amazed how they pulled away late. Like you said, it was tied in the third. And I guess it was a good halftime speech. You know, it's halfway through the third. Something clicked and made a huge difference there. But it was a good game to watch. Though I did have to peel away to the closer Rochester-Buffalo game because that game was in doubt comparatively. That's my thoughts there. Anything from you, Melissa? You're on mute if you...
Yes, I am on mute. I did not watch this one, but I think it's very interesting to note that New England just had two really big quarters. I mean, granted the third was kind of big too, but a 6 and 7 goal quarter is pretty big, especially when both of those quarters they kept Georgia to 1 goal. So Georgia was definitely in for part of it. So it's interesting to hear it described as very back and forth for a little while, because when you look at the score sheet, it definitely doesn't look that way at all. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in the playoffs, I think. I think we're definitely seeing a strong team going in with New England.
Okay, Sean Evans, 4 goals in just under 4 minutes. Sorry, just under 3 minutes. 4 goals in just under 3 minutes. He also had an assist on the 5th goal. That's all in the 4th quarter. So, yeah, not bad. Speaking of scoring records, we set a new one in Rochester. Dane Evans, good Lord, how many times have I said that? Dane Smith sets a new scoring record with 131 points in one season, and he still has a game left. Obviously, he's not on pace for the 150-odd points that he was just a few weeks ago, but he still got the record, and looked like he's just going to keep adding to that. So nice job, Mr. Smith. I didn't see this one at all. There was supposed to be a feed. I never got it. I saw some other people talking about watching the game, so clearly it was working for some people. I could never get anything. This wasn't even one of those where it was choppy or it was breaking up or it kept dropping. I just never got anything. So after a while trying that, I ended up going back to the Georgia-New England game. So I didn't see anything of this one. This was similar, it looked like, to the New England game in that it was tied. I had it up here. It was tied early in the 4th, and then Buffalo suddenly scored a whole whack of goals. Dane Smith scored a couple, Mark Stainhouse scored 3, Steve Priolo scored 1, and suddenly they're leading by 5 with 3 minutes left. So you'd figure this one's over. And then Rochester scores 4 in a little over 2 minutes. Unfortunately, the 4th was with 11 seconds left, so if this was one of those, if the game went 16 minutes in the 4th quarter instead of 15, it might have ended up quite different. But good job for both Buffalo and Rochester to have big 4th quarters there. What was the 13 goals in the 4th quarter between them? That's not bad. Tyler, it looks like you saw this one, or at least some of it.
Yeah. I had a feed. They always have kind of the worst feed come out of Rochester. The cameras are like white balance is overblown and everything looks grainy. There's no contrast, but still good to watch it. It's fun seeing this rivalry game because people are like, oh, Colorado and Calgary are rivals, Vancouver and Calgary are rivals, Toronto and Buffalo are rivals. But Rochester and Buffalo, there's people in the crowd dressed in orange. Rochester at home as a player go to the box and you hear the BOX chant. Those fourth quarter goals, just loud cheers from the Buffalo fans, for the Buffalo players. And that actually, I think, pretty much riled up the Rochester fans. So those last 4 goals, huge cheers coming back from the Rochester fans. It was just fun to watch, great atmosphere. And even though they didn't get there, there was some doubt to that game as those goals started chipping back, boom, boom, boom. I think the third goal that they got, they were down. Then I think Buffalo got one more late, but they were within like a goal maybe with 4 minutes left or something. It was a close game, and it was very exciting to watch and see the action going on there. But Buffalo proved that they're the number 1 seed in the East, and while they can go on the road and maybe have a little challenge, when they needed to win it, they put it up in the fourth quarter and took a road win home with them.
Yeah, this one sounds like this was just going to be an amazing game to watch. Unfortunately, we couldn't get this one to play for us either, so it wasn't just you, Graham. But we knew Rochester was going to come in hard. They had to play hard for this game to even stay in the fight. So we knew it was going to be a tough game. It's crazy just what Dane Smith has been doing this season. But again, I think Buffalo's in a good place. Unfortunately, I don't have much else to add. You guys kind of hit all the big points.
All right, we can move on to Toronto and Colorado, which we don't get to talk about often because I think the 2 teams have met, 4 times or something in the 10 or 11 years that they've been around. So I don't know what the deal is with the schedule there, but these 2 teams just don't meet very often. Josh Sanderson, as I said before, was scratched from this one. So it looks like basically, it almost looked like they would just take 5 people from the bench and say, you 5, go out there and be offense or be defense or be transition or do whatever needs to be done. Because we saw Brody Merrill out there with the offense a couple of times, and like not that that's really weird. He's not like unfamiliar with that end of the floor. And Kevin Ross was playing a lot of defense as well. Actually played really well against John Grant a couple times. But Dylan Ward was outstanding. The Mammoth D in general was really good. There were times where it looked like the Rock from the first 4 or 5 games where they just couldn't score anything. Were out there, and other times I thought the Rock offense looked really good. They were passing really well and trying to set people up. They just couldn't get shots away because the Mammoth defense was too strong. Or when they did get something away, Dylan Ward was there to stop it. So, kudos to the Mammoth defense for stepping up there. Adam Jones was out. We talked last week about Jones being out now and again for work-related reasons, but it sounded like he was injured. Though I don't know if they said. I don't remember them saying on the broadcast what the injury was. I guess at this time of year they tend to not do that. Callum Crawford stepped up as he frequently does this year. John Grant had a couple of goals and 3 assists. Ilya Gaich had a couple of goals. That was a different game. I was thinking of something else, so we'll get to that one later. That was it. It was entertaining enough game, fairly low scoring. I have to say the Toronto defense looked pretty good as well, because keeping the Mammoth only to 10 goals, but that was lots more than they needed when the Rock only scored 5. Not much more to say there. Melissa, did you manage to see this one?
I managed to see most of it. Unfortunately, I don't know why it suddenly happened. It was like the third quarter was just gone. We were watching it, and then before we knew it, the game was almost over. So we kind of missed a huge chunk of the game. So I didn't get to see part of it. But what I did see, it really felt like the Mammoth weren't playing. Feels like I watched a different team because I felt like the Rock lost the game, not necessarily that the Mammoth played to win the game. Like they just weren't playing as good as I think we've seen them play, and they just kind of had some some lazy play. I was frustrated with some of the shots on goal that some of the players were taking. That it was just like, why did you even shoot that? Why didn't you pass instead? Those kind of things. So it was very interesting to kind of hear such a different response. But especially when you look at the Mammoth being one of the top teams right now and all the issues that the Toronto Rock are struggling with. I mean, they couldn't even play all the players that they dressed, which means you had some players that were kind of playing out there more and longer, and so they're probably getting exhausted. And yet the Mammoth only won by 5. I mean, keeping a team to 5 goals is definitely an accomplishment. Ward did well there. But that really shows, I think, how well the Rock actually were playing. If they kept a team that could easily have scored 20 goals, like we were just looking at the Georgia-New England game. I mean, you'd almost have expected an end like that in this game because Toronto kind of came in limping. And then you put in weird factors like altitude and things like that. To see only a 5-goal game, I mean, yeah, it looks like Toronto got dominated, but for 5 goals, that's kind of not what I would have expected from these teams. And so to me, it really seems like Toronto was a much better opponent than the Mammoth expected them to be. So, did you see this one, Tyler?
Yeah, I was able to start it late last night and finish it up today. Managed to get it without any spoilers, which is pretty impressive. But that's why I don't tweet it all sometimes, because then I don't have to worry about coming across the score. The game could have been much worse for the Rock. The last possession of the first half, Mammoth pulled the goalie to get a possession, and Callum Crawford threw a lazy pass to Sandy Chapman, intercepted, ran down, and scored it, and gave the Rock a little jump going into the half, and I think another one early in the third. But yeah, the game should have been nowhere near as close as it was. Dylan Ward played fantastic. I mean, as bad as the 5 goals and the Rock offense apparently was, he had 90% save percentage, which means they took another 40-some, close to 50 shots on him, I think was the number. So you don't see a 90% save percentage very often, and that wasn't just their shot selection of the offensive players out there. He made some great saves. So good work by Dylan Ward in there, and it's nice for the Mammoth to have the kind of the choice between Bouquet and Ward when they need to, and know that they've got 2 solid choices, and hopefully it'll be a problem for them later on. They'll be like, oh, we'll play this guy because he's hot, and they'll pick the wrong one, and then like on Friday the Stealth will beat him, and we need that.
Problem with that though is, Tyler, is when they're on, they are really on.
Yeah,
they make the right choice.
Yep, but yeah, the Mammoth offense wasn't. In penalty, I think they probably scored almost every time on the man up, but their 5-on-5 offense wasn't where most of their goals came from. Ilya Geish had 1 empty netter and 1 transition. Number 4 Sullivan kid, he had a transition goal, so their 5-on-5 offense was not potent, and so if you can limit transition against the Mammoth, I think anybody has a good shot to beat them, because they didn't show anything to really be scared of there last night, even though they doubled up their opponent. So we'll see how that plays out next week and heading into the playoffs.
And since you're mentioning Dylan Ward, he did have 53 shots on goal and 49 saves for a 92.5 save percentage, which is outstanding. So, I mean, the team only allowed 5 goals, and since one of them was an empty netter, Ward only allowed 4. I don't know if we've seen have we seen any games with 4 or fewer goals this year? I don't think we have. I think there was 1 or 2 last year.
I think we had a 4-goal game this year.
Was there 1 this year?
Because it tied the, I think Georgia may have done, or they tied the stinker record.
But either way, 4 goals from Dylan Ward, so excellent job. And one more game to talk about, and this was weird because the feeds from the LAC are usually excellent. They usually the quality is outstanding, and I don't usually see drops in the feed all that often, so everything's really good. But this was exactly the same as the Rochester one for me. I got nothing at all. So I didn't see this game. Actually, I went to bed about halfway through it because I just couldn't stay up any later. It was already past midnight for me. So I didn't even find out what happened until first thing this morning. So Tyler, I'll let you talk about this one since presumably you watched it. Or did we lose Tyler? Or did we lose me?
No, we got you and me.
Okay.
So I think we have a lag with Tyler.
Okay, well, until we get Tyler back, I guess I can talk about what happened in the game anyway. Did you see this one, Melissa? Maybe you can talk about it.
Unfortunately, no. I did not see this one. I was thinking it was or no, actually, this was set yesterday. Unfortunately, I just didn't. I don't even know if I would be able to watch this one since it was an all Canadian game. We've had the most issues trying to get those ones to watch, but it was definitely one that I'm surprised to see the score. Vancouver, as we've talked about, when they're hot, it's like, holy cow, where has this team been? And then there's the other side of that. And so for them to come out and beat the Rush, I really was surprised. I mean, the Rush have been playing pretty solidly, and Vancouver just came out and took it away. It's not the result I think most of us expected. I mean, obviously Tyler was the only one who picked it, and we're kind of joking that, you know, it was a homer pick because who would think that Vancouver would have beat the Rush at this point in the season? They just haven't been playing that way. And so they've kept their playoff hopes alive, and next weekend is going to be interesting because
Well, if you look at the Stealth, the games they've played this year, they've only won 5, but where did they go? There it is. They've only won 5, but 2 of them are against the Rush, 2 of them against the Roughnecks, and 1 against Colorado. So if you're going to be beaten, if you're only going to win 5 games, you may as well dominate your own division. Now, I think they played Calgary 4 times, so they've probably lost to Calgary twice as well. But I guess they've beaten the Rush twice. That's pretty impressive. And as Tyler had said before, when you've got your whole team, if you've got your whole team that aren't injured, it's a totally different thing. And so good job on the Stealth. They came through when they needed to last week against Calgary. They came through when they needed to this week against Saskatchewan. And we had Tyler back for a second, and now he's gone. So hopefully he'll get back. So the Rush didn't have Zach Greer playing. I don't know if he was injured or if it was work commitments or something to that effect. So you take Zach Greer out of the Rush, you add Garrett Billings back into the Stealth, and that's going to help. I don't know how he looked. He picked up a goal and 5 assists, so it sounds like he was kind of back to normal. So we have Tyler back now. Hopefully he can stick around. Tyler, are you still there?
it must be
No, Tyler yet.
It must be night of the internet issues because our internet's been so crazy we can't do the video, and so now Tyler's having issues with his. Must be one of those nights.
All right. I guess I can go over what happened in the game. Vancouver basically just dominated the game. They won the first 3 quarters. Well, I guess they tied. Each team scored 3 in the third, but they were up by 5 at that point. They kind of almost gave it away in the fourth. In the Saskatchewan scored 5 and Vancouver only scored 3. the Rush managed to get back within one with 2 minutes left. And of course, 2 minutes in a lacrosse game is plenty of time to score one goal. But they managed to keep the Rush off the board, scored an extra goal to give themselves some insurance. And Vancouver led this game for over 58 minutes. Yeah, they had a couple of 5-goal leads. So it was certainly a solid performance from the Stealth. So good job for them. Yeah, I'm hoping to get Tyler back, and he's joined the call, but it doesn't sound like he's available quite yet. Okay, well, we can move on to our predictions, and if we manage to get Tyler back, then we can go back to the Vancouver game. Predictions went pretty well last week. I went 3-1, as did Melissa. Tyler went a perfect 4-0, so nice job. As we were saying before, we're not sure if the Vancouver pick from Tyler last week was, God, I hope they win, so I'll pick them, or I think they're going to win, so I'll pick them. But either way, he was right, so that was good. I am still bringing up the rear at 36-39, hoping for a big week next week to finish off the season at 500, so that'll be good. Tyler's had a couple of good weeks, so he's up at 40-35, and Melissa's still 5 games ahead of him at 45-30. So nice job, Melissa. 6 games this coming week, and I had to think about these ones for a little while, and I almost wanted to put in some conditions there. Vancouver plays Colorado on Friday, and then they play in Georgia on Saturday. And I almost wanted to say, well, if they win on Friday, then maybe I'll change my pick on Saturday. But if they lose on Friday, then something else. And excuse me, but yeah. So I'll let you go first, Melissa, just because that's what we do here.
That has been the way this season. Although you won't be making too much ground on me this week.
No, it doesn't look like it.
Since we have pretty much the same picks, Tyler is the only one that's different. So for Vancouver and Colorado, I'm going with the home team, which was really kind of hard because Colorado, they struggle on Friday nights, and coming off the win that they just had, Vancouver definitely is showing what kind of a team they can be. They always tend to show up and play hard against the Mammoth. And then you have the fact that I don't think Colorado played as well this weekend as I think they could have and should have. So I'm picking my home team, but I'm not as confident in that as I actually feel like I should be at this point in the season. And then with Vancouver and Georgia, I'm actually going to go with Georgia, and a big part of that is I think Vancouver is going to throw a lot of it into the game against Colorado. I think that's just going to leave them a little more tired, and since Georgia is going to be a fresh team, I think that's just going to give them an advantage. I think Colorado and Vancouver is going to be a hard-hitting game, and they're just going to get a little beat up. So New England and Buffalo, I'm going to go with Buffalo. That one is a tough choice because New England has been playing so well so far, and I definitely think that could be their game to steal away. But, Buffalo likes to win in their home field, and I don't think that's going to be any different. But I could also flip a coin and pick New England on that one. I think either team really has the chance to take that game. With Rochester and the Rush, I'm going to go with the Rush. As we've said before, Rochester just has not been playing consistent, and why would you pick them over the number 1 team? Toronto and Calgary, we've been talking about how injured Toronto is and how much they're struggling, so I just don't think you could pick them. So we'll go with Calgary, and then with Rochester and New England, I'm going to go with New England. I think the fact that both teams are playing 2 games, they're definitely going to go into that one a little more tired, but New England's definitely been playing a little more consistently. So, do we have Tyler back? You want to go ahead and go on your picks?
Doesn't sound like Tyler's there. Okay, so he's probably sitting in his room going, I'm here, but we can't hear you. Okay, so I'll go over mine, and then I'll go over Tyler's if he's not around. Vancouver, Colorado, I thought about this one, and And as I was saying before the show started 2 weeks ago, this was an easy call. This was Colorado in a rout. But as I said before, Vancouver stepped up when they needed to against Calgary, and then they stepped up when they needed to against Saskatchewan. So could they step up when they need to against Colorado? Absolutely, they could. Like we've seen them beat the Rush twice. They can also beat the Mammoth. But I'm going to go with Colorado in this one. Kudos to Vancouver for playing really well the last couple of weeks, but I think it's got to end at some point, and this will be it. And this is where the conditions I was thinking about. If they win on Friday, then I can see them winning on Saturday, because then they're like, okay, we just need to win this game and we're in. As long as Toronto wins, it's a bit of a long shot, but they can't do anything about that. The last thing Vancouver is going to do is, or is going to want to do, is lose the game and then see Toronto win. So if they win Friday, I can see them winning Saturday as well. But if they lose Friday, then their season's over. They may want to play spoiler with the Swarm, but I think the Swarm will come out because the Swarm are also playing for a playoff position. And as you said, they'll be fresh on Saturday night. So I'm going to go with Colorado on Friday and Georgia on Saturday. And sorry, Vancouver fans. New England and Buffalo. Yeah, I can see this one going either way, but I'm going to go with Buffalo, especially in their own barn. Saskatchewan, Rochester. The Knighthawks are playing for their playoff lives. Saskatchewan's playing for first overall seed, so that's something that they certainly want, and I'm going to go with the Rush there. Toronto and Calgary. Toronto's got nobody left. It's going to be Rob Hellier and Steph LeBlanc just passing the ball back and forth to each other because they're the only ones left. So I'm going to go with Calgary on that. And Rochester, New England. Might be a playoffs without the Rock and without the Knighthawks, which is awfully weird. I think it's only ever happened once. And but I'm going to go with New England on that one. And I think that would mean Georgia makes the playoffs and Rochester's out. And we've already talked about Vancouver being out if these things happen as well. So that would do it for the season. Tyler, are you there yet, or should we go on with your picks? Oh, okay. No, Tyler, that's too bad. Okay, so Tyler is going with Vancouver on both of the Colorado and the Georgia game. Specifically added into the our little sheet here. Stealth need to shut down Stotts, which is always a good idea when you're playing the Georgia Swarm. Now, we also know that the Swarm have a bunch of other people who can pick up the slack if Stotts is shut down, but he's certainly been their top offensive guy this year. I wanted to look at that. 87 points for Stotts, 1 game left. Shane Jackson is at 75, Jesse King's at 73, and Johnny Powell is at 72. So there's lots of people to shut down on the Georgia offense. New England and Buffalo, he went with Buffalo, same as Melissa and myself. Saskatchewan, Rochester, he also went with the Rush. Toronto, Calgary, he also went with Calgary. And Rochester, New England, he went with New England as well. So other than the 2 Vancouver games, Tyler's are the same as us. And the interesting thing about Tyler's picks is that he picked Vancouver to win both of the games that they need to win to stay in, and then he has Calgary beating Toronto, which means Vancouver would be out. So, and I know he did have Toronto written down there at one point, and he looked at it and said, he just can't do it. And I can't really blame him for that.
Yeah, but Toronto could make some huge changes in the offseason, and we could have a really fun young young team that likes to run and gun. So I think we're gonna see a lot of changes in them next season, even if this one's kind of a wash.
Yeah, that would not surprise me, especially if like we talked about, you're going to lose Doyle and Sanderson. They might just decide, you know what, we're going to lose those 2. Let's just take the time and do the rebuild that every team seems to have to do every now and again. And if that happens, who knows what's going to happen? We talked about this earlier this season. The fact that a lot of Ontario-based players want to play for the Rock because they get a whole bunch of home games. The problem is, once you get those players on the Rock, they don't want to go anywhere else, right? Brandon Miller isn't going anywhere else. He might go to Buffalo or Rochester or somewhere close by, but they trade him to Calgary or Vancouver. He's not going. Likely the same with Brody Merrill and some of the other older guys. I don't want to say older guys, but they're still in their early 30s. But a lot of players from this area, it seemed to be, they want to get traded to the Rock and finish out their careers here, and then they don't have to travel quite as much. But that makes them harder to trade. So do you go to Brody Merrill and say, look, we're either trading you or we're releasing you? Do you release somebody as good as Brody Merrill? I mean, he may be on the downside of his career, but he's still a damn effective player. So you don't want to just drop him. So that may make it difficult for the Rock to rebuild. But yeah, that may be a good topic for a future episode. Not that there's all that many future episodes left in the season. But I guess that brings this one to a close. And sorry that we lost Tyler, but hopefully we'll be around with functional internet connections next week, and we can talk about the end of the season and the first round of the playoffs, which will start the week after that. So this has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.